I knew that the team could handle anything that was coming.
A big outbreak of the deadly Ebola virus.
Killed more than 2,100 people.
The number of cases could double every 3 weeks.
It was projected that there'd be more than 1 million cases of Ebola.
The Zaire strain really is known to kill anywhere between 40 and 90% of people who get the disease. So it is very scary.
You're gonna die. There's a good chance if you're infected, you're gonna die.
The world was on edge when this Ebola outbreak occurred, and it seemed to be completely out of control in West Africa.
Today, we are providing the information that an individual traveling from Liberia has been diagnosed with Ebola in the United States.
Ebola is not a disease native to the U.S. And that was the whole point of really pushing the global perspective early on. That disease, watch it.
Well, American health officials are scrambling to contain the spread of Ebola here in the United States.
2 Americans being treated for the disease.
Texas health officials scramble to contain the deadly Ebola virus.
100 people who may have been exposed to Ebola.
Public concern is intensifying.
There was a scale and severity to that outbreak that we knew we really had to work fast.
The urgency of developing the vaccine was great.
The single most important thing that we can do to prevent a more serious Ebola outbreak in this country is making sure that we get what is a raging epidemic right now in West Africa under control.
You don't really think about regulations and rules at that time. You really think about how big is the public health emergency, and if you have a vaccine candidate, what are the data that you really need in order to make sure that you bring a safe and effective vaccine to the public?
Fortunately, at that time, there had been vaccine candidates that had been manufactured that were already available and sitting in a freezer.
So we started the Ebola outbreak with 2 vaccine candidates, but both of them needed to be developed very much from scratch.
I can, test the safety of a vaccine by giving it to healthy people, which is a normal way the vaccine safety is evaluated. But how are you going to test the efficacy of the vaccine? How are you going to test the ability of the vaccine to prevent the infection or prevent the disease?
If we really want to know if an Ebola vaccine works, we have to wait for an Ebola outbreak.
And here we had the opportunity to do so.
Experts are very worried by the spread of Ebola to Nigeria.
The disease has been confirmed to have crossed Guinea's national borders into Liberia.
In Liberia, the NIH was very eager to conduct a rigorous vaccine trial.
A placebo-controlled randomized trial where some people get the vaccine and some people get a placebo.
They set up clinics in Monrovia, the capital, to see whether or not there would be a difference in what happened to vaccinated versus placebo recipients.
Ebola cases in Liberia are now at 0.
The trouble is that the way the outbreak evolved, very quickly there were no cases in Monrovia.
If no one is getting Ebola, you can't tell for sure if the vaccine is protective.
So they were not able to study vaccine efficacy in that trial because of the way that it was set up in one place.
The only study that was able to declare efficacy of the vaccine was a study conducted and sponsored by the WHO in Guinea. That was the Ebola Sasufi ring vaccination study.
The ring vaccination trial that the WHO did was a very innovative design.
If you identify someone who has the disease, you identify all of their contacts, and that's referred to as a ring. So basically what you're trying to do by vaccination is contain that infection within that ring by vaccinating all of the people who are contacts of a person who has the disease, as well as, in many studies, the contacts of those contacts.
And then that gave you the advantage that the people you were studying the vaccine in were people who were at very high risk of getting infected. And so that increased the power of the trial. And the other thing that they did was they did a mobile study. They went to wherever the cases were. So rather than insisting on doing their study in one location, they were able to do their study all around Guinea.
There's no doubt in anybody's mind that the outbreak would have been much, much worse and much, much more extensive had it not been for the use of the vaccine.
So even though the outbreak was eventually controlled, the work had to continue in terms of bringing this vaccine toward licensure.
When the house is on fire, yeah, you got all the fire departments in the world putting it out. But then when it gets to an ember, people start leaving. And they start going away, not realizing that ember can catch on fire again. You have to be prepared. What are you going to do? You can't just leave this. And unfortunately, you see that. Well, we don't need to put the resources there anymore. Well, yeah, you do, because this is going to catch on fire again.
Ebola wasn't just restricted to the West African outbreak.
An outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo has infected more than 3,000 people.
There were other outbreaks within Africa that required major responses.
It took another couple of years to really have the data to support approval. So you need the preclinical data, you need clinical safety data, you need clinical immunogenicity data and efficacy data, but you also need manufacturing data. And you need to have faith or data. Faith is good, data is better, that the facility really can, is adequate to make the product.
This is where Marion provided a lot of leadership in maintaining these communications.
Working with the CDC, working with the other agencies to keep that going.
And making sure that as we were evaluating the data, we could provide the manufacturer with information that was going to be helpful to them even before the application actually came into us at FDA.
As director of the office, you have to wave the flag and say, well, we got to keep this going. And that's part of the mission, to work to make sure that we have these products available.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration formally approved the first vaccine to prevent Ebola.
It was in December of 2019. I signed the approval letter late in the day, and I think it was just a couple of days before the Christmas holidays.